What's up, guys? My name is Veronica, also known as Coach V, and I am your host for the Oversharing podcast with Live the Dream Media. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Oversharing podcast. I'm Veronica, also known as Coach V, and I am so excited about today's episode. Before I bring my guest on so we can catch up, I know we're a little bit behind. I'm going to cut to a quick sponsor ad, and we will be right back. This episode of the Oversharing podcast is brought to you by Strong as a Mother with Shauna Leanne. Join like-minded mothers working towards similar goals online or in person. Shauna's 6-week Strong as a Mother program focuses on movement, nutrition, mindset, and accountability for new and expecting mothers. Reach out to Shauna via Instagram and mention Podcast20 to receive 20% off your first 6 weeks.
Hi, I'm Alan Murdoch. For the past 20 years, I've been buying, fixing, and selling properties right here in Southern Arizona. And I want to buy your property. Whether it's a house, apartment, commercial building, or vacant land, regardless of the condition or the situation, I want to talk to you. When you sell to me, I pay cash and it's hassle-free. No repairs, no closing costs, and no commissions. If you have a property you don't want to deal with and you want a quick solution, call, text, or visit selltoalan.com. Again, that's selltoalan.com.
Discover the power of 88 Crime, where your anonymous tips are rewarded with cash. When you call in anonymously with a tip, you are given a code. With the code and a password, you can walk into a bank and redeem your reward anonymously. If your anonymous tip results in a felony arrest, you can claim up to $2,500 cash reward. Let's stop the silence on crime and strive for a safer community. For more information, please visit 88crime.org or call 88crime.
Copper Creek Cookies, Copper Creek Cookies, CopperCreekCookies.net.
We can print anything on our soft vanilla logo cookies. We deliver them and other sweet treats locally. We are located at 4249 West Ina Road, Suite 121. Call us 520-300-1131. We bake smiles.
Copper Creek Cookies, Copper Creek Cookies, CopperCreekCookies.net.
I think we did.
Did you?
All right, guys. Today's guest is a double guest episode, and I am so excited to have them on and share their knowledge about marriage and relationships. They are hosts of their own podcast called The Relationship Renovation, where they help couples and individuals create loving, stable, and secure relationships by sharing practical advice and focus on actionable steps. They have an amazing team of counselors and therapists here in Tucson with a combined knowledge of master's degrees in clinical psychology, Western psychology, and mindfulness. They are a wealth of knowledge. Please welcome to the Oversharing podcast, Tara and EJ, who I have harassed for 2 years to be on the podcast.
Yay! Thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming.
I love being here. I love being guests on other people's podcasts. It's just so fun to see this awesome
fun, right?
setup.
I feel like it's like a little bit different, but it works out.
I love it.
We were talking a little bit before we came on, and I think I said like how excited I was like 3 different times. I was like, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. In another world, if I wasn't a trainer, a cop, and if I wasn't a cop, some kind of therapist for sure. Yeah.
And now you
if
get to
I'm a
pick our
listener,
brains.
Lots of picking and
Yeah.
rating. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know, tell everybody you're married. How long have you guys been married for?
Oh my goodness.
Like almost 12 years.
Someone better get this right.
So hold on, honey. Our anniversary was 2013.
3/9/13. So it'll be 12 years and
Yeah. See,
I graduated
after,
high school in 2013.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, we were married in March of 2013, and then our twins were born in 2014.
Twins?
Yeah, we had twins.
And
that
that-
went from
Boy and girl?
boy and girl.
And are those your only kids?
No, well, I mean, that's like kind of part of our story is
Yeah.
Tara went from 0 kids living up in the foothills, like just having an amazing life to 4 kids in 18 months. Because I had 2 boys that were really young when we got together.
Second marriage?
Second marriage for myself.
Second marriage for EJ. I'd never been married. His boys were 2 and 4 at the time of our wedding. And then on our honeymoon, we came back and I was pregnant with twins. So
our life went insane very
4
quickly.
kids under 5 pretty much.
That is crazy.
And I've been a marriage counselor now for 20 years. Like, it's something I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so when that transition came, and I said, and EJ and I were both therapists at the time. I said to EJ, if 2 therapists are having this hard of a time, with this blended family and this transition because the twins had colic. I wasn't sleeping. I was nursing.
Man.
Like I had no idea.
Because we had like such an amazing beginning to our relationship where like
The honeymoon phase.
yeah, and I had the kids half of the time, so it was like, you know, we'd have the kids, the boys, but then we'd have like, you know, half of the week where we could do whatever the heck we wanted by ourselves, and then 4 kids was like.
And so
Bam.
I'll just never forget the day I was running around Reed Park with the double stroller because the only time they would sleep is like if they were shaking in their. And I just said, EJ, like we have to help other couples. Like if this is this difficult, like, and we're therapists. And so that was the beginning of our counseling center in 2016. And here we are 8 years later and thriving and helping couples all over the world. And it feels amazing. But it started out with our own shit show.
Stuff, yeah.
Started out with our own shit show. Hey, when you said you had 4 under 5, I was like, the first thing I thought, I was like, well, no one has to ride alone in Disneyland. So you're fine. It's not that bad. If you would have had 5, then it would have been a whole fiasco.
Yeah, exactly.
So where did you guys meet?
We met in work. We both worked at a eating disorder center, a residential treatment for eating disorders.
Here in Tucson?
And and we were just really good friends and had a lot of fun together, like at work. And then things changed.
Well, he went through a divorce and he was coming back. And I said, EJ, I'm going to be your wing sister. We're going to find you a, what do they call it? A rebound.
A rebound.
And he
What do they call
and
it?
he kissed me that night and we have not been apart since.
You're like, dude,
who would've thought?
I wasn't supposed to be your rebound. It was supposed to
At
be
the
somebody
Surly
else.
Wench. That's a
Yeah, because I'd never, like, we were just friends. And
Yeah.
I knew he was going through a rough time, but that happened and here we are.
All right, EJ, did you like her for a long time?
I mean, she's just like, I mean, as you know, like she's just effervescent and she's super fun and she's just an amazing person to be around. And so, like, but you know, we were professional, like there for like a year where we were
He'd
just
bring his
colleagues.
little boys. And I'm like, oh, he's so,
So
cute with
cute.
his little kids.
Yeah.
And
That's kind of how me and Ernie started dating because I was seeing somebody else when we met and like we had to keep it very professional at work. And then as soon as I broke up with my ex, I was like,
yeah.
Hey,
what's up?
And here you guys are.
well,
1 year
we were like,
married.
what's up? It wasn't one or the other. It was both of us. But yeah, so crazy.
So yeah, that is the beginning of our story.
And that's so your business started in 2016.
It did. It used to actually be called He Said, She Said. Couples counseling because EJ and I co-facilitated
Because
our
it was just
couples.
the 2 of us for a long time.
And so it was the he and she, and we actually had a great time with it. We built this whole model, and what happened was couples were on like a year wait list for us to see them, and we know that couples cannot wait
that
a year.
long.
And so we started to talk about like, is this model trainable to other therapists? And absolutely it was. We were just a little scared to let go of the control because we thought we were the best. And now we have a staff of 16 and everyone's trained in our relationship renovation model, and 7 days a week we're open and couples are getting the support that they need and they don't have to have a year wait list.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
There's so much intertwined with that. One, being able to let go of and like
Big
give
time.
control to somebody else.
Yeah, that was hard.
But when you're so sure of something like the way that you do your program, then it makes it a little bit easier.
Well, and it helped because it wasn't just like, hey, let's hire some therapists who just do their own thing. We had created a workbook. We had multiple weeks that people work through together. And the therapists love it because it provides structure, and the couples love it because it's like they know there's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end.
Yeah.
You know?
So for something like the program that you guys have created, essentially, is it a start, middle, and end? And if they get to the end and it's successful, then they stay together, or
It's
yes and no?
Yes and no. So it's a model more so than a program because every couple is so different. And what might take some couples like 4 months to work through all of our lessons and processing, some couples it takes a year. And it just depends on, is there infidelity and a lot of mistrust. And so every couple is different. But the cool thing about the model is that
It's adjustable.
it's adjustable.
Absolutely.
And I always describe it like, you know how kids need structure? Like, so they know that like, oh, I know I can predict. I'm going to come home at 6 and we're going to eat dinner. It's like couples want to come in and just like
Let
get to
it
that
out,
point. And we're like, hold on, trust us. We've got a whole process we take you through. So we unravel it through like the attachment lens. So we get their background from baby to the time they met.
Their love languages, how they like to, the attachment start. That's interesting.
Well, how they coped, how they saw their parents cope, how they saw their parents love or defend themselves. Because ultimately, when we become adults and then we get into this intimate relationship, our old childhood wounds for sure play out.
Yeah.
And we don't even know it because it's such an unconscious process. So we start with that, and then we take them through like communication series, intimacy series, narrative therapy, old story, new story, because we really didn't want it to be like a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you guys are having infidelity in your relationship. Here is, but no.
Why?
We have to understand all of it. And so we get very deep. And so when they do finish, it's called old story, new story. Yes, couples are, you can drive past our parking lot and you will see couples hugging in the parking lot. It's like amazing. And we give them like a little statue and saying like this journey you've been on, because it's not easy.
Yeah.
But here's like the freedom now that you have, because when people come in, they're not good.
Yeah. And also, so when the approach that you guys take, quote unquote, ends and they're hugging in the parking lot, is that usually the last time you guys see them? Like, you're on your
luckily,
own.
no. I mean, because I think what happens is a lot of times couples first come into therapy and they think like, oh, this is going to suck. Like, this is going to be miserable. And they end up really
Especially
enjoying
men.
it. Yeah. Men, it's a hard sell sometimes, especially for guys. But what they realize is it's actually a lot of fun reconnecting with your partner. And like, I know that like we have couples that we saw years ago that still pop in when things get a little bit off.
Little tune up here and there.
Yeah, and a lot of times a couple also will kind of like titrate down where they'll have come weekly and then they'll get through it, and then they come once a month for a year, and then they come once every 3 months.
Make sure that they're keeping those skills. And we're actually in the new year, we're doing a whole aftercare membership piece where couples can be with other couples who finished.
That's awesome.
The journey,
It's like a group.
and they
Community.
have the same language exactly. So we're super excited for that.
I had one of the girls yesterday when I was at the gym. She came up to me and she was like, hey, your podcast sounds great. I was like, thank you. She's like, I said, I'm having Tara and EJ tomorrow. She goes, oh, I go there. And I don't know what therapist she says she sees. I think she sees a guy. Her and her boyfriend I think they're doing like premarital.
We have that.
Yeah. We didn't do that. It was something that like we considered. I don't want to say we're perfect, but we communicate relatively well.
good.
I think the biggest thing for us particularly was like always finances. I feel like we've found like that, like pick your battles. Like, you know, like our steady, happy medium, I think that what it is. But it's just always interesting to hear somebody say like, yes, people can come, go and work with us. And then maybe they come back in a few years. And that's just proof that like relationships go through their ups and downs all the time. I think people always expect for it to be amazing
perfect the entire time.
And that's so important because we don't, like, we talk about this all the time. We're so imperfect. Like we have to like practice what we preach or we would be very disingenuous, but that we don't get taught these skills on how, like we're learned how to protect ourselves. And then when our partner becomes like this threat, because now we're arguing all the time or they're not siding with me, like, how do we get here? Yeah. And that it's skills. We need skills because our brain wants to just defend ourselves from suffering.
Yeah.
But we all suffer. And so the more we can learn the skills, which is what EJ and I had to do first in order to make sure that this works.
Well, and continue to do every day that there's, it's not a game over situation that like, oh, we understand each other and now we don't have any conflict anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it continues every day of like continuing to practice those things.
And I think the conflict also comes like in our societal norms is like, what's the conflict when you're dating? What's the conflict when you're married? And then what's the conflict when you have kids? And then what's the conflict when your kids leave?
Yeah.
And I feel like I've seen so many different couples go through different things. Like my parents did a really good job when we left and they empty nested. Like I think it took them time, but now they're out doing their own. They're having the best time. They're like, screw you guys. We're going to do what we want. And if you guys want to come, cool. And if you don't, we're still going to do what we want. And then I have an older brother who they're still in like the building the family phase. Like baby's coming in 2 weeks, third baby in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Their dynamic is different. And then my other, like everyone is so different.
Everyone is so different. And I for me, it's like, okay, so I would say 80%, if I'm wrong, correct me, but 80% of our couples come in and it's like they're either ready for divorce, but they'll give this one last shot.
Yeah.
And my heart's already said like, oh, why did you guys have to wait until this point? But that's us as humans, right? We wait until crisis, right? You had me at goodbye. Okay. I'll do it, whatever. And so unfortunately, by that time, you either have people that feel very powerless or apathetic in the relationship. But we are the hope holders because we know you're in here. You must
you're still there. Must be a little bit left.
And then what they don't realize, and what a lot of couples don't realize, because I'm really trying to get it out there, like, don't wait for a crisis, is that transitions are really tricky, whether it's early adulthood to mid-adulthood, whether it's a change of jobs, whether it's engagement to marriage, or you're having children, that there's a huge shift with transitions, but couples don't realign.
Yeah.
They think they should just stay in this other shift that they've
And
been
then
in.
I feel like then that creates that void. And once you've created that void, it's so much harder to bring that void back together.
That's exactly right.
Well, and I think you like a lot of what we do at the initial stage also is just like normalize it. That like nobody goes around or rarely goes around like saying like, oh, I'm totally struggling. Oh, I had this huge argument. That like a big thing you're doing is just saying like what you're going through is absolutely normal. And there's like a relief that people feel is like, oh, we're not just like broken. It's not just like us. Like everybody deals with this stuff.
I think it's also a part of, and I've learned this for myself, a part of me is like, when you still love that person, you still protect that person at all costs. So we have our fair share, but there's maybe one or two people in my intimate, close friends and circles that know if something is like not even terribly wrong, but if I've just like, I'm good, I've had it with you this week. Because I protect my husband at all costs. I don't want anyone else to have a weird illusion, because at the end of the day, if those people are my friends, they're going to support me more than they're going to support him.
Right.
And I feel like I've learned that with my friends too. Now that like some of my friends are dating, I'm like, are you my favorite people? Probably not, but I'm not going to lose my friend over you. So I'm just going to take a step back.
I mean, what you're saying is like, you really, no matter what, you're always prioritizing
the person you know.
the person you love and the person you're in an intimate relationship with is, and unfortunately, like when couples are together for however long or kids come in, like they start to take each other for granted.
so many questions.
And that priority starts to get less and less. And then both people feel very alone, yet they're together. And we always say it's
like
it
the
is so
roommate
much
phase.
worse to feel alone when you're with somebody than to just be alone. It's a very lonely place. And fortunately and unfortunately, we see a lot of suffering in that, but then we get to see the hugs in the parking lot after 4 or 6 months, however long
You're
it
like,
is.
oh, yes.
Like, this is why we do what we do.
You
And
said,
I think,
go ahead.
sorry.
No, go
I
ahead.
just think one thing that you said is like really important too, is why people need to go to therapy or get some help. Is that if you go to your friends, they're going to give you what's called confirmation bias. They're going to say, oh, my husband did this, and of course, what they're going to say is like, oh, well, he's screwed. Like that was stupid. Like you know, you get all this, bias because they want to make you feel better, and going to a couples counselor gives you that ability to have somebody who's, we always tell people like we are
looking from the outside in.
We're our client is the couple. It's not each individual. It's like it's your coupleship.
That's awesome.
that we're working on, and you don't get that with a friend. A friend is not going to be like.
That's a
working
really
out for
cool
your couple.
analogy, though. Like we're working on the couple's ship. You're not one or the other.
And we're helping them see the blind
Yeah,
spots.
I love
we
that.
all have blind spots.
You said 80% of couples come in usually already throwing out the word divorce.
Yeah, for sure.
I read this a long time ago. We're getting closer to wanting to start a family, and I read it somewhere and I'll never forget it. And it was like the first year that you have a baby, like don't even say the D word. Like don't even, like you're so sleep deprived. So I have two questions. One, at what point did you guys decide if we need to figure this out for ourselves so we can help other couples? And two, not tied in, but just so I don't forget. When I said men are usually like, ugh, I feel like usually men will go when the woman is already halfway out.
Yeah. For sure.
And I feel like with women particularly, I've said this all the time. I'm like, women will cry, scream, beg in a relationship. Most women, when they are done, they're done. And then men grieve after. Like they're like, okay, fine. And then like 3 months later, they're like, oh my gosh, like I lied. And I'm like, yeah, it was she gave you the chance.
Everything. She told you for 2 years now.
Yeah, and now that she's out.
We see that so much.
I mean, I think that part of it is tough because men are like they want to fix things. That's a big thing we deal with in communication with men is like you don't have to be in that problem solving mindset because that's not what she wants. She wants to be emotionally connected with you.
Yeah.
And so for men going to therapy is like admitting that it's broken. And they do, and men will go like to the ends of the earth to try to tell their partner like, oh no, everything's okay. I love you. It's great. And then
like,
the
but
other
it's
person's
not.
like, no, it's not. And I've told you this. And we've definitely had this between the two of us where Tara's like, I've told you this like 100 times and you're not hearing it. And there's a part of me that still doesn't want to hear it.
You're like, no, but it's fine. No, it's not. I'm telling you, it's not fine.
Well, I remember the exact moment when
You were like, we got to get it together.
Because I was so sleep deprived. You're right. The twins had colic. And if you don't know what that is, they screamed bloody murder like for 18 hours a day.
For
They
9
nursed.
months.
They nursed every hour.
And
they,
two of them.
And they wouldn't take a bottle. Like they wouldn't take my milk in a bottle. I'll just take the milk from the breast.
They want my boob.
And I was just so exhausted. And I remember EJ would come home at night and he had taken over my whole caseload, like eating disorder patients who were very sick.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, how dare you be out there with adults?
Good
Like,
old
I was-
resentment. Nothing like being
I was
resented
just
by the
so-
woman you love.
I was so angry, but I knew I loved him. But I'll never forget, like, I got in the minivan we had to buy. Yes, we had to buy a minivan. And I was like, I'm leaving. I'm out
done.
of here. I'm taking my twins to my twin. I have a twin sister. She's in Kentucky.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, I'm driving to Kentucky, and I'll never forget this. We're out by Star Pass. And I had to pull in because I needed to nurse in the back of the minivan,
you're like, how am I
putting
gonna
in
get to Kentucky?
Scooby-Doo. And I was like, that's it. We've got to do something. And so that's when I said, I know that I don't hate you. I know I love you, but I really resent you right now.
And I don't like you right now.
Because there's all this stress now, and I didn't feel this would be so stressful. And you did all of it to me. You impregnated me with these twins. You brought
took
in
my
the blended
caseload.
Yes.
And so I didn't know how to, I've never in my life been that overwhelmed with life. Like I went from doing laundry once a week to doing laundry 5 times a day. I was like changing 30 diapers a day.
That is insane.
It was overwhelming. So my little overwhelmed brain came out, and then EJ got super avoidant of it. And then that's when we were like, no, we've got to get back on track. And then once we do, we'll help other couples. And the first thing we did was code word.
What was the code word?
Okay, so EJ comes in, and so you're a
Wait,
mom.
why are we using the code word first?
Code word is I am not going to be my best moment right now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be my
It's
best
just going to
self.
spin completely out of control if we don't find a way to stop.
Dang.
So
This
I
is really
remember
good.
EJ came in and I said burnt toast. I think I said burnt toast mother effer at first, and then I was like
Burnt toast, motherfucker.
I was like burnt
Add
toast.
some jelly on that.
So-
Still doesn't taste good.
I would he'd get home and I'd forget that I'd have toast in the toaster all day to keep trying to go eat, but I
but you
couldn't pour the
couldn't.
coffee. So I said, EJ, when I say burnt toast, it just means like I'm not in my element. Like I'm not
right
my
headspace.
sparkling, effervescent self. I'm like, so I'll just like, you take the twins. I'll
Give
put
me a
on
second.
Miles
Yeah.
Davis. And that was literally, it's so crazy to think that changed everything, because now I stopped resenting him in that moment, and I just took 5-10 minutes, and EJ would start to help me. Like if all 4 kids were there, he's like, guys, we're going to go on a walk. Mommy's
We're
going
heading out to the
she
desert.
needs a
We're going to be
second.
back.
Yeah.
He would head out just to the desert and walk
Yeah.
these children.
You didn't have any kind of support, like family support with
No,
the twins?
It was
Not at
we had
first. My
nothing.
parents moved down like
A year and a
or
half
so
And by then
later.
you're like, I'm good now. These kids are
yeah.
walking.
Absolutely. No, it was all me. And even with the 2 younger kids, they were in kindergarten. We didn't have
Oh
help
my
there too.
gosh.
So I'd have to take 2 baby carriers out of the minivan, go to the kindergarten classroom, and even if they were sleeping, and I had to manage all of these 4 kids. I used
By
to have a
yourself.
friend that would come over on Mondays. She'd call it Manic Monday. She's like, you need something, Tara. And she would, Auntie
She's like,
Jen.
anything.
Yeah.
You're like, please bring me anything.
Like, just do the homework with these kindergartners.
Please. You're like, you know what? Take my boobs while you're at
but
it.
code word, and it's something that it's a tool that we give couples very early on, so they don't keep re-traumatizing themselves.
Yeah.
'Cause it's
Or
like, you're
expect
here
the
now.
reaction that you're going to get. You're
Yeah.
already on edge because you're expecting the
Yeah.
reaction.
And it's an individual accountability. I don't ever say to EJ, use your code word. It's just like, hey,
He needs to know to use his code
I'm
word.
not my best self right now, and I'm going to go. I don't want to get out of my window of tolerance even more. I'm going to go listen to some Miles Davis, read
I'll
an
be
Us
right back.
magazine, whatever it is. Put on
Yeah.
a little Housewives of Salt Lake
Something.
City. You know, just down
Housewives.
like
You know, what is it? What's that? The TV company called?
Bravo.
Bravo. I love Bravo.
Oh,
Tara is a BravoCon aficionado.
when you just got to go offline.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Alan Murdoch. For the past 20 years, I've been buying, fixing, and selling properties right here in Southern Arizona. And I want to buy your property. Whether it's a house, apartment, commercial building, or vacant land, regardless of the condition or the situation, I want to talk to you. When you sell to me, I pay cash and it's hassle-free. No repairs, no closing costs, and no commissions. If you have a property you don't want to deal with and you want a quick solution, call, text, or visit selltalon.com. Again, that's selltalon.com.
Discover the power of 88 Crime, where your anonymous tips are rewarded with cash. When you call in anonymously with the tip, you are given a code. With the code and a password, you can walk into a bank and redeem your reward anonymously. If your anonymous tip results in a felony arrest, you can claim up to $2,500 cash reward. Let's stop the silence on crime and strive for a safer community. For more information, please visit 88crime.org or call 88crime.
Copper Creek Cookies, Copper Creek Cookies, coppercreekcookies.net.
We can print anything on our soft vanilla logo cookies. We deliver them and other sweet treats locally. We are located at 4249 West Ina Road, Suite 121. Call us 520-300-1131. We bake smiles.
Copper Creek Cookies, Copper Creek Cookies, coppercreekcookies.net.
There is a lot of digital marketing and digital advertising agencies throughout the US. I see a new one pop up every day. But we stand out because of our community impact, our client relationships, delivering and doing what we say. That's a key thing, right? A lot of places will tell you, hey, we're going to do this. They don't communicate to you. We're in communication with you. You're going to always get that real small business feel from us. You're going to have ways to contact us, ask us questions, right? Because we want you to do better, but we want to be better every day as well. And we're always innovating. We're always coming up with new ideas, new ways to win, applying for new platforms, and even creating some of our own platforms is some of the stuff we have going forward. So I would say that's what sets us apart.
All right, we're back. So I wanted to hop right back into this question because I don't want to forget about it. That's why I do my outlines. I was like, I don't want to forget anything.
No, I know.
What is the biggest commonality you see in couples seeking marriage counseling? And can we break that up between like, what's the commonality before marriage, if people are deciding to get married, while they're married, and like during kids?
I mean, I think the biggest thing that drives people in, and like when they're like, when we ask them like, hey, why did you make this appointment? It all comes down to communication, because that's whatever the content is, whether it's about kids or it's about sex or it's about money, it's how are they communicating about it? And they think it's just like a matter of like getting some communication tools. And that's where we sort of get in and help them understand it's a lot deeper than that. But most of the time what they're saying is like, we freaking argue all the time. We're constantly jabbing at each other. We're yelling and screaming. We can't communicate about anything anymore.
And so our job, and I say this in the first session, right?
Yeah.
We have to help you build emotional safety because you guys are now a threat to one another. You're sitting on opposite sides of the sofa.
Always walking on eggshells around each other.
You've got your body all guarded and hands and arms crossed, and that's what we're here to do. And so then we create very firm boundaries in sessions. Like you can't character assassinate each other.
Yeah.
Like we make that 75 minutes very safe so they can experience that at least for that moment of time and hopefully start to generalize it outside. It takes a minute, but it absolutely does work.
Before I got married that year, like leading up to it, I'd ask everybody and anybody that was married for, it didn't even matter. Like I didn't even care. I'd always be like, what's the secret to a successful relationship, marriage? Everyone said, mostly everybody, communication and forgiveness.
Yeah.
Communication and forgiveness. So I'm like, okay, I get that. I'm like, but what do you mean? Like, what is it about communication? I understand that it's important. I know why it's important in my relationship, but what's the missing piece for most couples?
We were talking about this morning on when we were taping our podcast is listening.
Yeah.
Like how often we're sitting there and we're not really listening to what the person is saying. We're basically just thinking like, oh, I can't wait till she finishes talking because I'm going to fucking drop the bomb on this. We're formulating our responses and then the other person doesn't feel heard. Like this has been a huge thing in our relationship is hearing difficult things maybe from Tara and being able to be like, instead of challenging it or defending myself,
Which he used to.
which I still do, which I
It's
totally
okay,
still
honey.
do,
Yeah. You're
which
doing
is
great.
biological. It's a normal thing to defend yourself.
Yeah.
Like that's how the human species has gone on. And a lot of times in relationship, we're fighting our instinct.
Yeah.
But my instinct to defend myself always creates more conflict. And if I can instead look at Tara and be like, okay,
I understand.
I hear that you're sad. I hear that you're frustrated. And I hear that you feel really disconnected from me. That
Is that your
tends
biggest
to-
thing? That's my thing. I'm always like, I can always feel when there's like even,
Yeah.
and I'm spoiled and I'm needy. Like I'm very
I
aware.
call it high maintenance emotional.
Okay, high maintenance emotionally.
Yes, queen.
And I'll like shut down too. Like if I feel it, I'm like, okay. Like
Yeah.
you want to give me no love? I'll give you no love back.
Yeah.
And men are dumb. My mom taught me this at a young age. She's like, honey, men are dumb.
Men
Your
are
dad is dumb. Your brothers are dumb. They don't know unless you tell them.
You
and I'm like,
have to share.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But then you have more, because you're powerless if you don't.
Yeah.
Because now you're the victim and you're not getting your needs met.
and then
that-
you're more upset because you didn't
Yeah.
say anything.
Yeah.
You're not getting your needs met because
Yeah.
you're not saying anything.
Yeah, I mean, I will go up to EJ and be like, EJ, I just need you to tell me right now that I look really cute because I put on makeup and I did my hair today
Yeah.
and you
Please
didn't
tell me.
notice. And I'm starting to feel like, why didn't you notice? But now I'm an adult and I can say, honey, I would really love some compliments right now. And he's like, okay.
Okay.
Well, my
fine.
job in that moment is not to be like, well, I did it yesterday.
He used to do
she
that.
could give a shit whether I did it yesterday.
No one
She
cares
wanted
about
it
yesterday.
right
We're
now.
in today.
Yeah.
I love that.
The active listening piece is huge. And another thing too is like the communication style, like we were talking about this today. Like people are allowed to be angry, but a lot of people anger scares them or they don't understand what it means. And so really having couples talk about like it's okay to be angry, but what does that mean when we are? Because we're either taught to avoid it or really escalate in it.
Yeah.
And so then people, right, that's the eggshells. You're like, what is this feeling? And I don't know. And so just really having some clarity around people's different experiences of anger is huge. And that discussion of it, because then it's like, oh, I can have compassion because I know when EJ sees me angry, it reminds him of some like bad stuff when he was a little kid.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to.
And just like conflict resolution skills is
Yeah.
because to think we're going to somehow eradicate conflict
While
in our
you're
relationship
yelling
is
and
crazy.
angry and-
yeah, but can we get better and better at getting in arguments? That's a big thing that we work with couples with, and we
Learn
talk
how
about
to
ourselves.
argue.
Is like, yeah, can we get better at this? Because I'm gonna piss you off.
Yeah.
Like that's
gonna trigger
that's
each
gonna
other.
happen. You're gonna let me down. We're gonna do these things to each other. But can we get better and better at doing it so it's less disruptive and we don't spend like 2 days pissed off at each other?
And I think that's learning about each other too, because I'm the kind of person that when I'm angry, you need to give me a second.
Yeah.
Because, and it's not that I'm upset and I know I'm upset. So either let me go to the gym, let me go for a drive,
Yeah.
let me go cry about it.
Yeah.
Usually by then, I'm like, I'll leave. I'm okay with leaving. And I think Ernie's learned that about me. And he's like, he doesn't message me. He's like, I'm just
like,
gonna
go
let
ahead.
her.
Yeah.
And then when I come back, it's because now I'm ready to
Now
have
I'm
a
ready.
conversation.
Yeah.
Every now and then, if I come back and I'm like, I'm not done, let me get in the shower.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and then Ernie will
That's
sneak
a
in.
big thing we talk to couples about as well, is that like when you do have that split, when you're like, okay, I need an hour or whatever, that we
Yeah.
don't spend the entire hour just thinking about how the other person's an idiot and screwed everything up.
Yeah.
That part of that hour is looking at ourselves and
Let me
being
wind
like,
myself down.
Yeah, like, okay, what did I do?
And what
Like,
just
actually, I got really reactive and I stopped listening. And so, because if the first thing I do is come back to Tara after an argument and take accountability, there's a decent likelihood it's going to go in a positive direction. Whereas if I come back and I'm like, yeah, I just want to remind you of a couple of things you fucked up. Let me tell you.
Let me just tell you how you fucked up this morning.
I do have to say the cherry on top of learning how to fight better is that because most people either avoid it or they just get in the same pattern. And so then I feel disempowered, powerless. I feel
And then again,
disempowered.
you're creating that space
So-
between you, that drive. Like if you're not wanting to resolve any conflict, that conflict just keeps building.
It keeps building and it stays stuck.
Yeah.
So EJ and I, like when we get through it and we're just like, oh my God.
You have sex. I'm just kidding.
makeup sex, well, if the kids are,
If the twins and the other two and everybody isn't at the house, and maybe.
But I always feel so much more connected.
Yeah.
Like it actually brings us closer together. And so when people get to finally have that experience, like we can actually fight
Yes.
and get through it. Now that builds trust. Now there's not a threat to the relationship anymore.
And you're vulnerable with that person that you
Yes.
care about so much.
And that's when a couple is like, we kind of call it graduation.
Yeah.
When they're able to have these fights and get through them and there's no longer a threat and someone's not saying, I'm out of here if this happens one more time.
Yeah.
That has now dissolved because they've really started to build emotional safety. And that's like for life. It's like they can come learn the skills at our center and, feel more free in their relationship. But it's like a lifelong thing to prioritize your relationship always and not let any thirds get in there. So this is always protected.
And it also, that takes a lot of self-accountability.
Yeah.
Like you being able to take a step back and be like, and I know you said, usually when you seek like an outside source, when there's like any kind of issue, sometimes you're going to get the person that's like, oh, like, yeah you're
he is
right.
screwed.
I will say I have one or two people, more particularly my older sister.
Yeah.
Because me and Ernie are completely different people. You've never met Ernie. You kind of know him, but he's very like yin and yang, completely different people. And there was an incident even like a month ago where I sat down with my dad and we were having a conversation and it just rubbed me every which wrong way. And it wasn't an issue in our marriage before, but because my dad brought it to my attention, I think it just really nudged me. Like, and it wasn't an issue before, but I went home and I fucking, like, I was pissed. And he was kind of like, what is happening?
happened?
So when I called my sister and I'm telling my sister about it, she's like, you're wrong. And I was like, what? Yeah. She's like, you're wrong. She's like, this has never been a problem in your relationship before. Why are you so preoccupied? Which brings me to my next question. How often do you see people come in and have marital issues? More particularly, I'll use my Hispanic upbringing as an example, and it's more of an issue that's being caused because of the outer sources such as family, particularly like cultural differences.
Family is huge. I mean, I
need to know everything that you think about family right now because this is such an important topic.
I mean, whether it's cultural or just sort of the nature
family.
of each. I think of it as we each have our sort of set of rules that we grow up with, and maybe the rule is like we don't talk about shit. Like we just like pretend that didn't happen,
That's its own
or
culture.
we have the set of rules of like we go at it. If there's a problem, we yell and scream, and then we feel good afterwards. And if you have two set of rules that are in pretty different places, then it's like, what is your roadmap together to solve problems? Because you're both saying like, no, I do it my way. No, I do it my way. And that causes like a ton of problems.
So that's where we get into boundaries. What is okay? What is not okay? And how do you, again, we're always looking at it as like the couple bubble. How do we protect the
your
couple?
bubble?
Because other people are going to try to get into that bubble.
Yeah.
Exes,
That is
in-laws,
so hard.
children.
I'm sure it's for multiple ethnicities.
For sure.
Our family particularly, that is so hard.
Can I share something with you? So I've worked with like a lot of cultural aspects in the Hispanic culture where parents just want to be very intrusive into others, or it's just like the family system is like, we share everything with each other. What do you mean? Like, this is just like my other arm. And, and so the boundaries and like having to give up, like, I mean, I'm thinking of this one particular couple, like, he had to give up seeing his mom every other Christmas because she was so tired of having all
this conversation right now. You have no idea.
Because she would get so resentful that her family would come last and theirs was first. And if theirs wasn't first, then they would get mad at him.
Yeah.
And it was, so now like it took 2 years with this couple that they have the healthiest boundaries. Their family system finally accepted it because they stayed consistent with it. And it feels good for both of them, but it was causing. So, I mean, holidays were the worst.
It's the hardest thing for and not just me. There's 4 of us, technically 5 of us, and that is the hardest conversation every year.
Yeah.
Whose house do we go to?
So it's always, I don't know if you're asking, but I'll tell you anyway. So my mom has hosted for years, our entire lives. But I also have a husband who has a family and 4 brothers and sisters, and I'm married. Like, it's not, I'm not just dating this person anymore. Now we are married, and I try to be as even as I can be, but this was a big conversation. Our first, so we got married last year in end of November, close to December, but we did Thanksgiving at his mom's house. and then we did, or backwards. I can't remember. It was one or the other. It was like Thanksgiving one, Christmas the other. And
It's like a custody schedule for their.
my mom was pissed.
Yeah.
My mom was mad. Like she was, and I was like, okay, you're upset at me. I love my mom. I said, but you also, when you got married, you also went and did the same thing. So what is the difference? It's like that need to have control.
Well, wait
Yes.
until you have kids and there's like grandkids involved.
Oh
That's
my
the other
gosh.
thing is like, and when like, you know, the mom or
We'll
the
be here.
grandmother
Yeah,
tries
we'll
to
be
be,
here.
Yeah,
you know, the
seriously.
grandmother tries to be the parent.
And I don't want to
and the mom's
discredit
like, no,
that
hell
alone.
no.
My mom had that experience. Like she, you know, my mom's worked her entire life, and my older brother was essentially kind of raised by my grandma. So when my mom would try to like set boundaries, it was also always so hard for her because my grandma had this like almost like this power, you know, like over him because I raised him. And I'm like, yeah, that's still her kid, you know? And it doesn't go to take away, like, we have a wonderful village.
Yeah.
Like, my parents are amazing. My in-laws are amazing. They're great with the, like, I don't have kids, but I see them with all the other kids. And I'm like, what a blessing to
Right.
be able to have those people in your life to help you.
Yeah.
But also, like, where do we draw the line?
So imagine this though. So imagine you have this dynamic of where are we going to stay at whose house, and you feel allegiant to your mom, and he feels allegiant to his mom, and then you don't talk about it for 15 years, but you just argue about it every year, and you don't understand, like, why can't we figure this out? And that's where couples come in, is they're just like ripped apart for 15 years of this conflict and the way it's metastasized all across their relationship. And so what we do is we take them through this program where like we help them understand each of how they grew up.
Yeah.
And then we help them go through their relationship together, and they literally like untie the knot. They figure out like, oh my God, like that's what's been happening forever. That's why like we all
And
like
with that-
get grippy.
With that, I feel like it's also prioritizing what's important to you as a married couple, as a relationship. Like, what is important to you?
Well, and there's a grieving, right? Because we call it, there's this term called individuation from your family of origin. Family origin does not like that.
Yeah.
They don't want you to individuate into your new couple bubble. They will pick and pull in any which way to stay in the system. But when you have that individuation piece, not only individually, but for your partner, it's so healthy. But there's so much
disruptive.
There's so much enmeshment that usually happens.
It
when we
takes
start
work before you get there.
and that's the boundary piece. Like, most people are like, boundaries? What do you mean by boundaries? They have a whole different definition of it. And once we like boundaries, like kids love boundaries, that feels safe.
Yeah.
Right? Even though they say, no, I don't want a boundary, they really need it.
Yes.
It's the same thing for couples, because they know no matter what mom says or dad does or friend does this, like, we got this.
That's so hard for people.
We have created a boundary.
It's difficult too, because you think of it from your mom's standpoint is like
That's her
it feels
baby.
like a loss to
Yeah.
her. Yeah, she goes from
Yeah.
having you for the first however many years of your life, every single Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then suddenly she has to spend a Christmas alone half the day.
Yeah.
Like
This is
that's
where you build a
it's a hard
compound.
sell.
So
You just build the compound.
I'm a planner to the death of me. So I will say that I've gotten the easier end of it because my older brother, he's 36, he'll be 37. When he got married first, he's the oldest, and those boundaries started coming up, that was a Royal Rumble. Because it was the first.
Yeah.
I think for my parents now, it's become a little bit easier.
It's not their first rodeo.
It's not their first rodeo anymore. And also my sister tells me, she's like, you have a way of telling people to kindly fuck off. And I'm not telling my parents to fuck off, but I can kindly set boundaries and be like, that's not what we're going to do.
That's
so
huge.
Back in August,
Yeah.
I said, hey guys, just so you guys know, we'll be at my mom's on Thanksgiving. We'll be at my house on Christmas Day.
Perfect.
You're more than welcome to come over.
Yeah, there
We'll
you
see you
go.
guys
I
then.
love that smile.
That's like 4 months in advance.
Yeah.
It's not a surprise anymore.
No, exactly. That's the plan, predict, prepare. We learned that from Dr. Stan
Oh, look
Tatkin.
at me. I'm planning, predicting, and
The
preparing.
more you can
to
triple
get yelled
P
at
it,
by my
we call
mother.
it the triple P. You're good. You can't predict everything, but you can set yourself up, especially for those situations like over the holidays with family and extended family. You can plan, predict, prepare with your partner, and hopefully 9 out of 10 times you're successful at whatever you did plan.
I think that's also a part of like when they say like family therapy, we're doing therapy, except like there should be other people that are also doing therapy that are not going to do therapy, like our parents.
Right.
And I think that they do see it like as a loss. But I always tell my mom too, I'm like, like, what a blessing that you raised all your kids. They're all in good relationships.
Yeah.
Everyone's healthy. They're have kids.
independent.
They're independent. You built that. You had a lot of part in that. So it shouldn't be a loss.
Yeah.
It's like you think that I want to not spend time with my family with the traditions that I was used to? No, I don't want to, but I also have a husband. That's hard.
It's different. It's not a loss. It's just a different chapter now. And how can we all like make it a great chapter, even though there will be some grieving because it's different now.
Yeah.
Well,
I think the grieving part is important.
It's layering in everything too, because like you have to have that boundary. But if you're just a boundary person and all you do is like just this is what, and you're not the empathy that you came in afterwards of like, Mom, like I know that this must be hard for you, but I have a family. You know, we have to be able to sort of like switch skills, and that's another huge thing we work with people about is like multiple skills are going to help you have a healthy relationship. There is no like one fix, like if you do this and then it's all good.
Do you feel like when it comes to just the conversation of the holidays or just in general, do you feel like usually the husbands or male or whoever is pulling more to the woman's side or backwards?
Oh, I've seen both, but I usually feel like men are the ones that kind of give in.
Yeah.
And then they get...
And then the mother-in-laws hate the...
Then they get passively aggressive. See, I can see it in body language, so I will point it out, like, what's happening right now? Well, I haven't got to see my mom in 2 years now, but here we go, because she's so miserable at my mom's house.
We can't go.
And I said, so you're not accepting of this boundary? And he's like, no. I'm like, well, we have to have an
reassess
agreement.
This whole thing now.
Now we have to redo it, because he wasn't, but he said he was, but now that's causing distress. And then she didn't know. She just thought he was going along with it. And so it's like you always can come back, and it's got to work for both people, and it's got to be genuine. It cannot be passive aggressive.
Yeah. I think Go ahead.
Well, I think what you're talking about there is like that avoidant personality is like sometimes if there's one person who avoids conflict at all costs,
because his wife is fiery.
It seems like, oh, I'm a peacekeeper.
Tara, when's your birthday?
June 3rd.
Okay.
When's your birthday?
April 20th.
Yeah, the avoidant person seems like a peacekeeper, but really what they are is they're laying the seeds of resentment because they're not talking about it, but internally they're not happy with it.
And
they
then
really
every time they go to
it.
Christmas at Mom's, you're watering that seed that you just planted of resentment, and it's just blooming and blooming and blooming.
Yeah.
That's wild.
I'll share one more just for listeners out there. Like another thing that we feel like that helps individuals is this idea of, and it's like a whole lesson in our model, but it's acceptance versus resignation. And that so many people get in this place of resignation. So in resignation, you feel like the victim, like nothing's ever going to change. You're very disempowered.
Whatever, screw it. Have it your way.
Whether it's work schedules or like colic with the twins, like it doesn't matter. I'm like, oh, I'm resigning.
Yeah.
And if we can shift that couple, same circumstances happening, but this acceptance, like it's not going to be like this forever. It's going to be like this for right now, but it does something in your body. Like no longer are you disempowered. You're like, we've got this. We're a team. We can get through this. Yes, we only see each other 1 hour a week because of our work
But this
schedule,
is all temporary.
But it's temporary. But we get into that like all or nothing thinking. And so acceptance versus resignation is a very powerful tool. And when
it's
couples
like a aha moment for a lot
hear
of
about
makes
that, they're
sense.
like, oh my gosh, I never thought of it like that. It's the feeling of it.
This kind of ties in. I had a guest last week, and she's like a newer mom. She's a trainer too. And she was talking about how like people don't talk about like the darkest times in your life are very hand in hand with the most beautiful times of your life, like having a new baby. She's like, I didn't know that those two things could exist.
Yeah.
And she was basically saying how she's like, I didn't know that I could feel those things at the same time. She's like, and I told her, I said, you're never going to get this time back. Like she's never going to need you this much ever. Like she's never going to be attached to you for more than like 6 months, if that, you know, like, and it's that acceptance of like, this sucks right now, but this is what it is right now.
Yeah.
What is the beauty in this moment?
Yeah,
and
and what
even
is
in the
the beauty?
darkest time. I mean, that to me
that's
talks a
why
lot
we-
about vulnerability too, is like if when we go through difficult times with people, we have the opportunity to put up our walls and go into our own instinctive, like protective behaviors, or we can let our walls down and be open about what's going on, and then we connect more deeply because we've both been vulnerable. Like, you know, it starts off as conflict, but then it can end up as a really connecting moment for couples. But it takes a hell of a lot of work to get there.
I used to have to chip away at EJ to get to that vulnerability, and I'd break him down. I'm like,
I think that's how Ernie is. He takes time.
Well, it's not our, men are not programmed to be vulnerable.
It doesn't come naturally.
We're programmed to get punched in the nose and punch somebody back. That's just not, we're taught from a very young age to not show our feelings because it's dangerous to do so. And so it takes a certain training, because we also don't want to abandon that completely, but we want to have the ability to intentionally say, okay, this is a moment where I'm letting my walls down. And I think most guys and most women too, I mean, that's not our instinct to be like, oh, this is a difficult time, let me just lower my walls so you can really hurt me, so you can rip my heart out.
You can really punch me in the nose.
Yeah.
And I've got to say this. I share this all the time because, almost 50% divorce rate.
That's wild.
It's really high. And a lot of couples come in and they think if my partner were just different. But no, second marriage divorce rate is higher than the first. And the third marriage is even higher, because guess what? It could be the most different type of spouse ever than your first, and the same stuff repeats itself. There is something.
At what point did you think maybe I should reassess myself?
Well, that's my story. Tara told her story about sort of when she decided she really wanted to do this couples work. My story was I had been married. It did not work out. It wasn't good. I got together with Tara, who I was crazy about, and we were so connected. And then I felt like I was starting to have some very similar problems, and I had to take a look at what's the common denominator here? I found somebody who's completely different
and amazing in so many ways,
and yet it's the same shit. So it's obviously I got to start looking at myself,
and that's hard.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because it's because I was I'm cool.
I'm so cool.
I'm so cool. Well, she even thought I was cool 6 months ago. Now she thinks I'm a total
cool
prick.
Anymore.
Yeah.
Well, and I also say this because couples will come and they're like, how do you know that we're going to end up together when we're all done with this? And I said, we don't. We have no clue.
Idea.
But what we do know is this. You will be making a decision out of clarity and insight, which is huge for your kids to see, instead of just reactivity and then trying to find yes. And so we have couples that actually go through the uncoupling process just to gain clarity about themselves and not to mess up the next relationship.
Do they come in together?
Yeah.
No way.
They do.
That's amazing. So I had never heard of that before.
Yeah, because we'll have couples that come in and they're like, we just want to do this in a really
cordial,
intentional way, and
way.
We want to show our kids that we want to be the best co-parents ever, and we want to unravel this so when going into the next relationship we don't bring in the same baggage. We just want to understand it more.
That's amazing.
It's very admirable.
Or they come in in a space of just not knowing and keeping an open mind, and maybe they end up working out.
I was going to say
maybe they don't, but they know they loved each other,
and maybe they're coming to unwind, separate, and they end up.
For sure.
We've had it all.
We've had everything.
Yeah.
We've had it all.
Okay, I had this question on the outline. Have you guys ever had a couple that has come in and they're doing all the work, but you're like, it's not going to work out? Do you tell them that? Do you say, we don't think that this is going to be...
Never.
No? You just let them decide?
I think
that is not my call.
We would never say hey, you can't, this
isn't going to work out.
But if there are problematic dynamics that are not healthy for them as individuals and
or
their
kids
children,
involved,
if there's the way you guys are dealing with conflict is bordering on or is domestic violence, you guys need to seriously, you need to separate, you need to create safety, because one of you is going to end up in jail or one of your kids is going to end up in CPS or something.
We don't just
if somebody has a serious substance abuse issue, it's this is not a couples issue,
This is a you
there
issue.
are certain things that we are have hard lines, because ultimately we have a code of ethics that says we got to help people we can do no harm.
Yeah.
And if couples counseling is not indicated as not the right thing for a couple, we have to also say hey, go to individual therapy for 6 months.
Yeah.
And get
and see how you guys feel.
Yeah, and see if you can figure out how to deal with your anger in a healthier way.
Well, because couples counseling can be very agitating, and it can get worse before it gets better. That's the really hard part. And in our first session, I always say, you guys, the minute you don't want to come back is the minute you have to, right? Because that means the system's starting to change. But because we don't like change, even if change is a good thing, because this other place was so dysfunctional, it doesn't matter.
Your body is like fighting the change.
And they love, like, they'll come in, they're like, we're done after like 3 months. And I'm like,
no, you're not.
But don't cancel my appointment next week.
We'll be back.
I'm like, you guys remember that little messy middle thing I talked about?
Yeah.
It's happening.
This is it.
And
This
they'll
is
be
the
like,
messy middle.
and they'll be like, oh my God, you're right. And they'll see how excited I am because I know the system's
like, it's
changing. And they're just like, you are crazy. But it lasts about a week. Like, and we didn't see that until like 2 years in. We're like,
there's a
why
trend
does
here.
This messy middle happen? Because of homeostasis. You're starting to disrupt
Your body
it
wants to go back to where it's used to being.
Yeah. So that's pretty
crazy.
Cool too. God, I feel like we got to talk about so much today.
I know. I love it. We have a little bit of time left, but I still want to pick your brain a few other things. What do you guys, if you guys could pick the qualities of a long-lasting relationship / marriage, obviously communication's one of them. Like, what are the, like, another two?
For me, it's emotional availability.
Can you elaborate on that?
That's someone who is willing to, although might have a problem-solving brain, he's willing to go deeper and understand what the suffering is under there, because then they can understand that suffering for me too. Who's just willing to look at themselves. Like EJ and I, we continue to go to our own personal therapy always, because I just a huge believer that, like, I don't know anything really, and just being able to, like, be myself and get feedback from professionals and, like, just do our own work to continue to be this, like, best human we can be.
And also because it pours back into your business. You guys are like your own walking platform.
And we want all of our
do.
therapists to go to therapy too, because we hold a lot of suffering every day, and that for sure impacts us. I'm like, what is it like to be at, like, a Trader Joe's job? Like, I'm like, I could just be in a Hawaiian shirt and, like, eating all
eating some pumpkin rolls.
I mean, I've been holding suffering. I've been doing this since I was 24 years old. So 23 years, almost daily, I hold people suffering.
Yeah.
And I hold it because I love holding it. And then I love helping them get back to where they need to feel empowered again. But there's also just, like, something to be said about your own self-care. And so,
that's important.
So I guess going back, that's my partner is doing self-care, and we're doing self-care individually. And
oh my gosh, I love this conversation, because this is another thing that's, like, it's different. It's different for our families. Like, I'm very much so, I think my relationship works because I have a lot of my independence, because I've always been very independent. I enjoy going to get a pedicure. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to go with a friend. I don't want to go with my mom. I just want to sit there. I talk to people every single day, all day. I just want to be alone. Ernie likes to golf.
He wants to go be social.
Yeah, he doesn't like to be social. He wants to. No, he goes and golfs, and he sometimes will go by himself. Like, that's his thing.
So you guys both like your independent time.
We do. But I think because of that, we have such a good relationship. We have that separation, and then we're able to pour into each other's cups because we're like fulfilled with ourselves. And that's also hard for, like, my family.
Yeah.
Like, they don't understand how I can show up alone to a Father's Day. And I'm like, well, he has a dad too, but also, like, why do you care?
Who cares?
Like, I'm here to see you, you know?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's another thing with couples. Like, they forget to take care of themselves because they're taking care of finances and kids and sports and school. And that actually, it can wreck a person.
Yeah.
You forget who you are and what makes you feel so good. Like, I just like watering plants. Like,
Yeah, you're like, I just want to go outside and water my plants.
Get back out there. Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the most important things for couples to remember is that the thing that drives you the most crazy about your partner, or the way in which they're acting that seems the most unreasonable,
is usually what you love about them.
Well, no, is generally, like, their point of suffering. Like, the times where I get the most angry with Tara, or the most upset about the way she's acting, and I know it's vice versa, are when she's really suffering. Like, when she's really having a hard time, but it doesn't look like it. And so it's so important to realize, like, okay, this is, like, my partner's area of growth. Like, this is, and so how do I be empathetic instead of just, like, pointing a finger at them and saying, like, stop doing that. Like, that sucks. You suck, you know, instead of, like, just having an empathetic, open heart to them, and then getting invested in both of you guys becoming your best selves together.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense too. And I feel like that ties into, like, the attachment part of it is, like, we yearn and we ache for the things that we didn't have growing up. So again, I don't want to say it was an estranged relationship with my dad, but it was a different relationship. So growing up as an adult and being able to vocalize like, hey, like high maintenance, like I need some love.
Yeah.
You know?
Got abandonment issues. I'm over here too.
1000%.
Well, and that's, if you walk into our office in Tucson, like you see this little chalkboard sign and it says, our partner is our greatest teacher. Be patient for the lessons. It's so true. EJ has taught me so much and vice versa. And had I not stuck around, had I gone to freaking Kentucky in that minivan, I wouldn't be the person I am now. We wouldn't have impacted so many other
amazing
couples' lives. Because we were willing to do it and we trusted it.
I love that.
And now I could just cry because I'm just proud of all of it.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
I love the way he looks at you too. Every time you talk, he's like, I have one more question, then we'll have to wrap up. And this is a selfish question for myself because I, as I said, I'm transitioning into like wanting to start a family. What is your biggest piece of advice for marriage
With kids?
with let's say new baby and kids?
I mean,
And I need both perspectives because I feel like this is going to be different. I feel like from a dad's perspective and from a mom's perspective.
I mean, well, okay, so I'll be brief, but two quick things. Like one is that as a dad, I think you cannot forget about how much your wife is going to want you to be her protector in that first year. Is that she's in an extremely vulnerable state, and like I feel like I did a kind of shitty job, honestly, and feel
like,
bad about that because it's easy to get just trapped in triage and just getting through the day, and I wasn't
going through the motions.
I wasn't a protector. I should have protected her more.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is I would just say, like, and this is the thing we've really struggled with, is you have to preserve together alone away from your kids. You have to go out on dates. We still are shitty at this, and we try.
Y'all better get it together.
Yeah. We, like, our date is like the backyard, you know. Like,
but hey, that's something, right?
It's literally the one thing that probably has kept us connected during some really tough years.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys know who Sean Johnson and Andrew Easter? Mm-mm. So she was an Olympic gymnast, and her husband played for the NFL, and then they retired, and they just started a podcast, a family podcast. They had kids. They have 3 kids, and they had Friday date nights every single Friday.
Yeah.
And I listened to their podcast. She was pregnant. She had the baby on like a Sunday. On that Friday, he was like, "Get ready, we're going on a date." And she was like, "What?"
Oh, wow.
He's like, "Your mom's on her way. We're gonna go to the McDonald's drive-thru. We're going on a date." And she was like, "What?" She's like, "I cried the entire time I was gone. I couldn't even think about the idea of leaving my baby for 30 minutes." She was like, and she was like, and it was the best thing that I could have done.
Yeah.
But again, also it takes a village. Sometimes people don't have that, and we understand that.
Yeah, but you can still have
something.
You can still have control. And so I'll say what my advice would be is, it's like, if you have any savings at all, just get a night nurse.
Please get a night nurse.
The thing for me was like, especially with twins and colic, like I'm already putting so much pressure on myself as a new mom. Like, what's happening? Am I being punished for any bad thing I've ever done?
I'm sorry.
So like acceptance and non-judgment from your partner. Cause like, I know like I was already judging myself, like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And so I feel like acceptance and non-judgment is huge, because I also had to deal with postpartum depression.
Yeah.
And so that was even like another kicker.
Another layer.
And then I'm going to piggyback onto what EJ said, is like quality time every week. Like, I don't care if you have to hire, I don't know.
Something, whatever, make it work. 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
It's so hard because those twins of ours had severe colic, and I did not want to put that on anybody. I was like, nobody, like I can't.
No one deserves
it. But then she got like, you were burnt toast because you took it all on.
You were burnt toast.
Yeah. So that's it. Yeah. Quality care, quality time, and just acceptance, and just always talking about what is this like? EJ saw me different. I was like this milking cow, like all the time, like wearing like sweat stuff,
baggy clothes. Wow. You're like, these kids just want me. They don't want you.
So sweaty all the time. Oh, God.
Well, I am so glad I harassed you for 2 years.
Yeah.
You guys are going to have to come on so we can dive into something else. I always tell my guests, like, I send an outline, and it's good to have it, but it's always a really good episode when it's just like rolling, you know?
Yeah.
Totally.
So
We
many
love that
reference
too.
This
points.
was fun.
Yeah. Tell everybody where they can find you. Tell us about your podcast. Tell us about your business, all inquiries, everything and anything. And then we
are a weekly podcast, drop on Friday, Relationship Renovation. Also, we have a YouTube channel and the same episodes come out on video. If you're in town, relationshiprenovation.com. We have a ton of amazing therapists. You can
We're gonna
come
have
in,
some more
get a
come on.
consultation. Yeah. And then we also have an online product, Relationship Renovation at Home for people. It's a little more economically priced. And
Perfect.
You can do it at home.
And
I
our
love that.
Instagram is just relationship_renovation. All of our little YouTube shorts are on there from our podcast episodes.
Alrighty. Well, you guys know where to find me. All things @GPSoto on Instagram. Thank you guys so much for coming.
You bet.
You guys are amazing. Thank
You
you.
are awesome.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye-bye.